Hey, John, this is Sean, just doing one more sound check. Hey, John, it's Sean here, just following up with a sound check. Hey, John, just a follow-up sound check.
Yep, got you there.
Perfect, loud and clear. Thanks. Sorry for bugging you. I know you were busy there.
No worries, thank you.
Hi, Suzanne. Can we do a sound check? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Louise. Can we do a sound check, please?
I'm not Louise, but sounds great.
Oh, I just let Louise in. Hi, Louise. Can you do a sound check?
How's that? Can you hear me?
Perfect. Thank you. Hi, Everett. Can we do a sound check, please?
Who wants to start early?
We can't.
You sit and watch the clock? You do? All right, I will call the meeting to order. For November 7th, 2023. Attendance at the start of the meeting is 100% with Councillor Jolly online or virtually attending. Need a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Yeah.
Councillor Mackay.
Oh, I
Oh,
beat Shelley
you tried
this
to get in
time.
there.
I got Shelley beat. They're coming at me from everywhere.
Go ahead.
That the November 7th, 2023 agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you for that. Call for the vote. That passes unanimously. All right, first thing on our agenda is we have a couple of registered speakers. I have Declan Fawcett with us. How are you? Good. You can make your way over to the microphone. And then Ian Sanderson. Ian, do you want to wait till we get to the topic? Yeah, that's what I kind of figured. Okay, so Declan, thank you for joining us. You've registered to kind of talk to council about St. Albert Transit, right?
Yes,
Okay, so you have 5 minutes to speak. You can start whenever you're ready. PowerPoint? Oh, nice. Okay.
who am I?
Go, you can start. Yep,
Hi,
you're in control of it. There you go.
who am I? I'm Declan Fawcett, a resident of St. Albert. I'm 20 years old. I'm one of over 100 Special Olympics athletes registered in St. Albert. I currently work for the Edmonton Oil Kings and at Rogers Place. Why do I care? Individuals with disabilities are more likely to require transit. I will not have the ability to drive. I'm not choosing to take transit. I need it to go to work and appointments. Bus stops are not close to a lot of places. Why are there so many future bus stops that have not turned into real bus stops? There has been one by Ronald Harvey for over 10 years. How long have I been riding the bus, the transit? I've been taking the bus for 7 years. I taught a few of my friends on how to take the bus. I used to have a job here, but I decided it was too hard to get to work on transit. I was ambassador for the 2023 Special Olympics Alberta Winter Games. I traveled between St. Albert and Shore Park often. I found this way easier. Is it easy to get to where I need to go? No. Who do I think rides transit? Students, people who work in the city, and people with disabilities. Routes are catered to them at peak times, and then the rest of the day is not easy to get around. People with disabilities walk a bit slower, so a 10:39 walk will more likely be starting at 10:30. 11-minute walk is not fun at -20 when the sidewalks are not plowed. It looks reasonable, but it's not. To get home from where I used to work, I could get to St. Albert Drew, but then when you walk 15 minutes to catch to a bus stop to catch a booker bus. I would not be certain that the booker bus would come at a reasonable time. Suggestions for improvements. Have local buses run later than 6:20 p.m. People are still trying to get around. Increase the frequency of buses out of downtown Edmonton on event nights. Waiting for an hour for a bus in the front. Maybe people would take the bus down if they had a wait at home. Look at flying buses in newer neighborhoods. I can't even get to my dad's house right now. Is it possible to run more of the smaller buses, etc., dads in neighborhoods to bring people to main routes? Thank you for taking the time to hear me. I challenge each of you to take the bus to meetings and appointments for a week.
That, first of all, is a fantastic presentation. Second of all, is a really good challenge. It would be difficult. I can get for sure. So, Declan, the way this works is you've made your presentation, which I thought was great. And then now members of council can ask you a couple of questions. And then once that's done, then we ask our staff, and hopefully we have some transit people online that can help us out. I'm seeing a nod. Okay. But Councillor Killick over here has a question right off the bat. So go ahead, Councillor Killick.
Yeah, thanks, Declan, for coming in and presenting to council and laying things out very clearly for us. I really appreciate that. So where you said you couldn't get to your dad's house on the bus, what neighborhood is he in now?
Currently in Riverside.
Riverside, okay. And that's like you absolutely can't get there. You're up in
The closest bus stop there would be on Layden Drive, and I would have to walk from there, which is probably a 20 to 30-minute walk.
Okay, thank you. And how long is you put a chart up that you're from your house over in Lacombe to get to the Holiday Inn for work? How long did that take you when you have to go to the Naki Transit Center and all the way back
So,
north?
so when I took the bus there, I would have to take the bus from Northridge all the way down to the mall, then back up. And it would take almost an hour.
Almost an hour? Okay. And does that run on a frequency that meets your work schedule? Like if they schedule you on the weekend, can you get there as well, or?
Not really, because of the frequency of the busing.
So you miss out on the opportunity to work then if you were scheduled.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Okay. Thank you. And I also know it's Declan's birthday coming up here on the 14th, so we should all wish him happy birthday as well.
How did you see that? Did I miss that? Declan, I see, Councillor Shaw, you good? Any questions?
No, I know this problem well. I appreciate the presentation.
Yeah. So Declan, this was, as I said, a really good presentation. It's good for council to hear these kind of problems from people who use the local transit. We are always trying, and in our budget this year is actually transit into Riverside. So when we get our administration to answer some questions for us, we can get an update on when that's going to actually come online. But yeah, I hope you appreciate that it's costing, I think, 400,000 or something to get, what was it to get transit into Riverside? Can't remember. Whatever, I'll ask you guys in a minute. It's not a big deal. It's just a balance sometimes. And we have policies that say when a new neighborhood gets to a certain build out, that's when we bring the transit in. So Riverside is well there. We're going to do that. But I wrote down buses running later than 6:20. More frequency and maybe later on event nights in Edmonton. New neighborhoods was another one that I heard. There was a fourth one that I think I might have missed. Is that right? Oh, smaller buses. Yep. Smaller buses trying to
Like
connect.
the handy buses,
Yeah.
like those small buses, like the DATS buses.
Do you use the on demand, like the dial-a-bus?
Yes, I do, but like half time the app it always says like high demand.
High demand, okay.
Because like
Yeah.
when I do get it, I find it stops at places and then people don't get on. They
Okay.
just book it, then never
Oh.
show up.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so I'm going to encourage you to maybe have a seat up in the chambers there while we ask some questions of our administration so you can hear some of the answers. That is the last presentation. So now we'll get on to business arising. So council, any questions for administration? And I can start. Who do we have?
We have Louise Stewart and we'll.
Luis is here? Okay. Luis, you here? Thanks. My first question is, I know Riverside is in the budget this year, right?
Correct.
I might have completely misspoken the dollar value of that. Do you remember what it is?
520,000.
520, so I was actually low. And a lot of that depended on ordering the buses, is that correct? We didn't have an actual fleet?
Correct. We don't have the actual buses to go into those neighborhoods yet because we were a bit behind. Those have been ordered. We will not have them by our planned launch date, which will be this summer, which is what we've said we will do. We actually have been working out, Tom Kumka's got a really good relationship with the region to supply us with temporary buses while we're waiting for our new buses to come. So the service will still be achieved, just not with our brand new buses.
Okay, so summer of 2024, Riverside should see service.
Absolutely, yeah.
There was also a question, and actually it came up, I did a coffee with Kathy on Sunday and it came up there. And so I think I put it in as a CI. There are bus stops in the community. I know there's one in Oakmont that I drive by every day and one by, we said Ron Harvey. Yeah, and it says future bus stop. So if it's been there for 10 years and they've got a fully built out neighborhood, is there something the city should be doing to either remove those or actually deliver the service?
So that one I'd actually like to turn over to Will Steblick for a
Okay.
response.
When we establish bus stops in newer neighborhoods or neighborhoods that are brand new, we identify a number of bus stops throughout the community. And as the community develops and we plan service for it, there might be particular streets that we don't use for transit routes, and we have future bus stops identified on them. We kind of choose to leave them as such because in the event that we ever make a change, it protects our interests on that street. And if we ever did make a change to the route, those local homeowners would be aware of it. But you're right, sometimes they go many years without being used. And perhaps at those times, we can start taking out those bus stops if they've been there for many years in mature neighborhoods. But we like to keep them up for a good long time in case we ever have to make a change to a route. We've got bus stops and we don't have to go through the exercise of establishing new ones.
Because you run into neighborhood or community pushback for the people that live near the bus stop?
Precisely, because bus stops come with parking bans. They come with, just a lot of people resist having them beside their house or across the street from their house. So they're there to protect our interests in the future in case we ever do need to establish service on that street.
I think this might need further conversation because the expectations of the people that ride the bus are now not being met because there's no bus coming there. And then we should just say that every street in St. Albert could potentially have a bus stop. Just put that as a blanket.
Well,
residents do not own the street in front of their house, but I get what you're saying. Yeah. I'm going to go to Councillor Romansky first.
Thank you through the mayor to administration. Thank you again, Declan, for appearing today. And one comment actually made me curious. Is there any consequence to people that use the app and book a bus and, just don't show? Because I mean, it's taking traveler time and driver time. So what recourse do you have?
Yes, we have been in recent weeks, we have been taking measures to reduce that. We're sending notices out to individuals who are frequent no-shows, telling them exactly what you just said, that your service could be used by somebody else and you're not using it. So we're sending out notices, we're keeping track of them. If the behavior continues, they get another notice saying that their accounts will be taken down. And then on the third notice, I guess you could say, we will shut down their account.
Thank you. That's my only question.
That's good news. Councillor Killick.
Thank you. Just a follow on to Councillor Romansky's question. Do we know, is it kind of, to use the term, frequent flyer? There's a small group that of individual accounts that do that on a regular basis, or is it a widespread?
No, it's pretty narrow. It's a pretty narrow group. And we have records of all of them, but it's a small group. It's not that widespread, but it is enough. The small group creates enough of that to impact the service, and we want to eliminate it.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. Does that typically happen at peak traffic time, so it does affect a larger group, or is it kind of the off peak?
Typically it happens in the evening.
Oh,
and later in the evening, and book a bus needs to be available to those who use it at that time because it's later at night. So No, it's not a peak period circumstance. It's usually later at night.
So this may go back to, I think Councillor Hughes mentioned one time there was kind of the party bus booking a ride home and then deciding not to take it. So,
Well, to be honest with you, Counselor, that's exactly what we think is happening. I just didn't want to say it to specify a certain group, but yes, that happens a lot.
okay,
Or it happens. It's done. It happens through a small group, but they do it. That is the circumstance.
okay. Thank you for the clarification. Appreciate it. And glad to hear we're doing something about it. So maybe that does address the point made by Declan. So appreciate that.
We're trying to free up as much space on Book a Bus as possible because we know it's a popular service. And more people are creating accounts and using it.
Good. Okay, Councillor Mackay.
Yeah, really quick. I'm wondering in relation to one of the other problems facing not only Declan, but other students and residents that use the transit. Like you've identified many times, we're great at going north-south, but we just don't have the ability to go east-west because of the way our loops work. As part of the budget this year, we have a kind of a transportation master plan that will, I guess, maybe pick up on some of the transit gaps, if I can say. Am I correct in that? Is there a possibility that master plan will identify what it would involve, what it would take, including the costs, if we developed a true internal transit system as well as a commuter transit system?
I think that could be made part of the request for proposal. And we could get a third-party assessment of those requirements and those costs.
Yeah, I would imagine it would require significant changes or potentially additional buses, but I would like to know that because that's starting to be a familiar refrain that we're hearing from residents.
You're saying we don't have a true local transit?
I'm
You just
gonna-
want
I'm gonna try,
service.
I'm gonna take up Declan's challenge. I'm gonna try and take it
Yeah,
for a week and see how far I have to walk.
it's a good time to do it before it gets too cold.
It's
We should, yeah.
You can
Like to
increase
see
your
all of us
step.
do it. So the other points that were brought up, buses running later in the evening, that just would be obviously a service level standard that would just cost money, right?
It would cost money. Yeah.
Well, and then same with, what about working with the city of Edmonton, planning around event nights? Do we have?
It's an interesting idea. It would be interesting to implement it on a pilot basis, try a few Oiler games and such. And maybe increase the frequency of the 201 so people could use it to get back to St. Albert, to the park, to Naki, let's say, to the park and ride. Again, it's a dollars and cents thing, though.
Right, yeah.
And, every service addition is a challenge for yourselves because it means
Costs, yep.
fairly big money.
Well, when Taylor Swift goes to Rogers Place, we'll get a bus.
There'll probably be a
I call, or
park and
two,
ride. for that.
according to Diane. Exactly. That would be a draw.
Who's Taylor Swift?
I can honestly say that because Taylor Swift's never gonna come to Rogers Place, at least not in the next foreseeable future. All right, so Declan, I hope that answered some of your questions. A lot of it's just about money and cents. We're gonna get you some service into Riverside. Conversations with the city of Edmonton about event nights absolutely can happen, and yeah, so I think you're gonna have some counselors that are gonna take you up on the challenge. Maybe we'll document it through Facebook or something, but I really appreciate you coming. It's a really good conversation we just had that we don't actually quite often have, so that was good. So that was business arising from our presentations. Next thing, we have a consent agenda, which I think just has a couple of things. So anyone willing to dive into consent? Go ahead, Councillor Hughes.
You got so far ahead of me. I was reading the other thing about the reserves. Hold on, let me just go back to the page. That the recommendations from the following agenda reports be approved. 6.1, regular council meeting minutes of October 17th, 2023, special council meeting minutes of October 17th, 2023, an organizational council meeting minutes of October 24th, 2023, and 8.1 bylaw 2022/2023 repeal of penalty bylaw first, second, and third readings.
All right, call for the vote. Vote is closed. And that passes unanimously. I can tell council that we just got a message from our friendly reporter. If anyone takes Declan up on the challenge, he'd like to write about it in the Gazette. So that there goes a little bit more incentive. You all got the text. Okay, now we're on to the RCMP officers, request for additional officers. So Everett, are you feeling well enough to open this up? Poor Everett's at home with with a virus. Feeling okay?
I'm feeling much better, about 65%, but I'm going to apologize if I start wheezing or making funny sounds. It's not me protesting, it's simply me trying to breathe.
All right, take it away.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of council. I'm very pleased to be here with you today. Administration is before you today with a recommendation to authorize the mayor to formally request that the authorized strength of RCMP officers for the city of St. Albert be increased to 75. This represents a growth in strength of 5 positions. In addition, should council approve administration's request, we are asking council to approve increasing the ceiling of the budget of the budgeted number of RCMP officers in the financial reserve from 6 to 8. As council is aware, the local detachment commander, along with the support of the St. Albert Policing Committee, determines the appropriate level of resources required to ensure effective staffing of service delivery for residents. Forward-facing services are inclusive of responding to calls for service, traffic duty, proactive patrols, and attending community events. Of course, this is over and above those that are carried out in the detachment. Staffing vacancies impact these services. And of the 70 approved positions that council has authorized for the city of St. Albert, a total of 55 are currently filled or working in a near full-time capacity today, when we subtract the number of soft and hard vacancies from the total of frontline members. It is because of these vacancies that municipalities employ an over-ask strategy for frontline officers. As the numbers demonstrate, St. Albert does not have an issue filling current positions, as 68 of the 70 are staffed with 2 hard vacancies. However, 13 of those again are considered vacant due to soft vacancies. And soft vacancies, of course, are created when an actual officer is not working in a full-time capacity, is on leave or special assignment. I do want to note that the city of St. Albert is not directly charged for soft and hard vacancies, as billing for officers is passed on to us directly when an officer is working in a full-time or near full-time capacity. So again, when we count them as being on the boots on the ground for us. Understanding this, our current and past budgeting practice has been to budget for an equivalent of 65 officers. By utilizing this strategy, it would be expected that given the historical vacancy rate of RCMP officers and the detachment commander's ability to manage incoming placements of new officers, administration would have a better opportunity to obtain and manage the desired number of RCMP members to meet community needs. Should this request be approved today, administration would continue to operate at the 2024 proposed budget amount, which is equivalent again at the 65 officer level. Of course, the city may access the RCMP contract expense reserve, which can fund the over-ask if the actual number of officers was to exceed 65 in the 2024 budget year. If council does not wish to support the recommendation today, the following alternatives could be considered. One, do nothing, and City of St. Albert would not proceed with requesting any additional officers from Ottawa. Or two, that the agenda report, RCMP request for policing increase, be referred to administration or the St. Albert Policing Committee for further research that is to be guided by the general discussion had here today at council. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you do have.
All right, thank you. Before I go to questions, I'm going to go to our registered speaker, Mr. Eden Sanderson, if you want to come down, and then we can just get all the questions together. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Yeah.
We certainly, the policing committee, two members are with me here as well today. I'd like to thank you for consideration of the discussion that we had back in August that brings us here today to speak to this. I'm certainly here to speak in favor of this recommendation to council. The policing committee unanimously is in support of this. We recognize that this is not a total fix to the situation, but it does give us a local option that allows us to address the shortages that we're currently experiencing that are a result of basically not a nationwide, a worldwide situation following the pandemic and just recruiting and policing across the board. The current vacancy pattern is hovering around 30%. And this is having an impact on the types of proactive initiatives within the detachment that people of St. Albert get the sense of safety and security in their community from. If we just go to a complete response model with respect to our policing priorities, that being crime reduction, intimate partner or domestic violence, and or mental health and addiction issues, we're going to put an even greater burden on the members of the detachment and experience more health issues, which is a very large issue as a part of this overall issue that they're facing right now. As a committee, we support this request to reduce the pressure on current establishment at the detachment, to support proactive policing initiatives in the community, and to reduce the cost of overtime for members being brought in from other detachments to fill gaps in the shift schedule due to this high vacancy rate. We recognize this is a serious problem and that we have the opportunity here for a local response that allows us to create some additional capacity within the detachment and meet the policing goals of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanderson. Quick question for you. Have you taken over chair of the policing committee, or are you
Interim
vice
until-
chair? So you step up?
Interim chair until the first of the year when the chair is renamed.
Okay.
Correct.
And can I ask you to introduce our new OIC to council? Councillor Mackay and I have met, and I saw you talking, Councillor Killick, but I don't know if everyone else has. So
Staff Sergeant Dwayne Moore, and I'll let him speak.
Hello, how are you? Thank you very much for the invite and having me here. I very much appreciate it. I have had the opportunity to meet with a number of people here in the room, but for those who don't know me, I'm Staff Sergeant Dwayne Moore. My regular job is that I'm in charge of the Thorsby Breton detachments, just southwest of Edmonton. I'm up here on a secondment while Ryan's just off for a short period of time. So I look forward to meeting with everybody else, and if there's anything that we can do on our end, by all means, please let me know. I look forward to meeting with you and receiving your feedback.
Am I allowed to ask questions of yourself as well? Or maybe because I think Staff Sergeant Moore might know the answer to this better. So we are already authorized for 70 officers in the city of St. Albert. We don't achieve 70.
Correct.
And now we're asking for 75.
Yes.
So how are we going to get more when we can't even get to the 70? So my question to you, I guess, is does RCMP K Division, I guess it would be, to look at the ratio or like the difference of what the ask is to the actual complement? Because I'm fine with the ask, but I'm hoping it actually works.
Yeah, to answer your question, ma'am, we do actually meet that ask. The positions that currently are approved are 70. when we talk about the vacancies that we have, only 2 of those positions currently are what we would consider a hard vacancy. So 2 of those 70 are not currently filled. 68 of the 70 are filled. We do have members that are on paper and are in the process of being transferred in to fill those vacancies that we have. So we do fill those, the numbers, the 70. It's not that we don't fill them. The issue that we do have is what we would refer to as our soft vacancies. So currently right now we have 2 hard vacancies with members en route to fill those. We have 13 soft vacancies. Soft vacancies are considered, which are, as was indicated earlier, are positions that are not being paid, funded directly by the city to fill those ones. Anybody who's on either off on a mat leave, a pat leave, longer term off-duty sick, or what we would consider, or anybody who's working less than 32 hours is considered a soft vacancy. So there's 13 of those. Those positions are blocked, that's the terminology that we would use. So there is somebody assigned to it, but they're not being funded, and they're not here at work and filling those roles on a permanent full-time basis. Those are positions that we're not able to backfill because it's a soft vacancy. By adding the additional 5 positions, which would turn into 5 hard vacancies, then staffing, the RCMP staffing, will be able to, because it is a priority, I've spoken with them, it's a priority for them to fill those hard vacancies. Just like we have now with 2 incoming, if we have another 5, we would be able to start the process to fill those 5. So currently we're short 15. If all the other soft vacancies stayed as is, and it was currently at 55, and we had another 5 positions, then you would be up to 60 that you would have filled. And your budget is allotted for 65. So we're still below your allotted budget amount. That still gives us the flexibility, if members do come back in on those soft vacancies, that we're not going to be exceeding what you have in the budget for 65. As we see that number, if we ever got there, would start getting close to or at that point, then we could start working with staffing to make adjustments to ensure that we didn't have an overspend on your end.
Okay, so you see these 5 extra officers filling some of the soft vacancies essentially.
Well, yes, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly, yes.
And then, God willing, we got 75 officers, boots on the ground. Is the city of St. Albert then able to go back to Public Safety Canada and say, we only really need 70, take these other 5 and go?
For sure, you can
okay.
do that. You definitely can do that. You can eliminate. The other thing that we can do on our end is just not fill them. So even those positions are there, there's no requirement to have all of those filled. So we could just go and say, if you still wanted to keep it at the 65, if all of a sudden those numbers are at 55 and for some reason we got an extra 20 members and everybody was coming to work and you were hitting 75, well, we would know that was coming. We'd be able to make adjustments and say those positions are assigned there. There's no requirement to fill those positions. So you don't have to go through the process of actually eliminating them.
Okay.
We just say, we just don't want them filled.
Okay, great. And I guess this is for either Everett or Carrie or Diane's. We budgeted 65 in 2023 and we're budgeting 65 in 24. So no change in the budget. Okay. And then the last question I have is, when was the last time we actually had to dip into the reserve fund to, if we had more officers than we budgeted for?
Yeah, Your Worship and members of councils, I don't believe we have. In basically probably in the last 5 or 10 years, we have not.
Okay, so in the backgrounder, it talks about the reserve has a budget calling for equivalent of annual wages of 6 officers. However, administration is also recommending increasing the ceiling to be equivalent to 8 budgeted officers. That would be a policy change, not a budgetary change, but it would just increase the ceiling of the reserve. Like that's probably a conversation for a separate day because we're not talking about the policy, but I'm just wondering why you would recommend that when we've never touched the reserve.
Thank you, Mayor Heron. I think the thought is that we just would want to, as we continue on growing the community, we want to keep that in step, right? So we always want to have a certain percentage in the reserve based on our number of authorized officers. So with an increase, because I believe the last time we increased our authorized strength up to 70, we didn't do an increase in the reserve as well. And again, it's just to provide that buffer. Because if we ever did get the 75 officers, we are responsible to pay for them. And we only have 65 in the budget. So it was just to give that that buffer so that if we did get more than our budget, we'd be able to cover it while we manage through as the staff sergeant was speaking about, you know, eliminating or not filling some of those positions to get back down to our budget. We'd have that reserve too. If you chose not to increase the ceiling in the reserve, it probably would not be a huge impact, but it just, to me, seems good to keep those two things in step.
This is the policy.
Yes, this is the financial reserve policy.
So what happens when we hit the ceiling and we're still not paying officers? Where does that surplus go?
It just falls to the bottom line. So we take any of the RCMP surplus from a year and we top up the reserve up to what the ceiling is for that year. And any surplus over and above that just falls to the bottom line surplus for the city.
Okay. Feel like I'd love to look at that policy. I don't know if we need to, and not so much to take it down to 4 and give more money back to the taxpayers. I feel like we've got some other expenses in the way of equipment that once we hit the ceiling, the slush could go into like a mobility or body worn cameras or something that is along the lines of policing equipment that we're going to need, just kind of, but that's the conversation for another day. Sorry. Councillor Broadhead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since 2010, I think we've had this conversation several times over the course of the years. And it's a conversation we have when we meet with the provincial RCMP leadership as well. Interesting. I'm not sure the strategy has actually ever worked for us, but in any case, my question to you, Mr. Cook, do we have a record of the number of soft vacancies that St. Albert has experienced year over year and what that average of that is?
Through the chair to Councillor Broadhead, if you give me 1 minute, I can have a look to see if I can find that for you. I don't have it readily available, but if you give me a moment, I can see what I can find. If not, I can take that away and bring that back as information.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Second question to you, and this is anecdotal to be sure. I don't have written information to support this, but the anecdotal story among council colleagues from the region is that other detachments don't experience the same significant number of soft vacancies that St. Albert does. Is there a way to compare a detachment by detachment in terms of soft vacancies, or do you get that data, or what kind of data is available to the city of St. Albert to determine you know, how our experience is?
Thank you for the question through the chair to Councillor Broadhead, and I may ask Staff Sergeant Moore to add a little bit of context here for me as he works in this environment. However, when we were preparing this AR for council, we actually tried to explore that question, but we ran across some concerns that staffing levels of other municipalities may not be shared, or at least we didn't have the information readily available, and we were unable to attain it. And there were concerns with respect to some detachments may not want to share that information with us as well. So we did not dive deep into that. I don't know if Staff Sergeant Moore can add anything or put any more context around that for you, Councillor.
Yeah, and then perhaps my last question is why 5? Why not 7 or 8 or 10?
No, certainly. Through the chair to Councillor Broadhead, looking at the numbers we currently have, we're running around, for our authorized strength, we're typically seeing around 85% utilization. So by authorizing an additional 5 officers, we can expect that 85% of those 5 officers should be filled based on the statistical data that we have, meaning we would see 4 more officers be boots on the ground for us. So if I can elaborate a little bit further, if we approve the 5 We anticipate, as Staff Sergeant Moore said, we would get the 5 because that would be priority. However, based on the trends that we have with soft vacancies, we can expect 4 of those positions to be boots on the ground full-time, with 1, again, statistically, perhaps being creating another soft vacancy, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add a comment?
You want to answer? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, also remember back in 2014, we did have that formula, that algorithm basically that tied one RCMP officer to 1,000 residents. So, I mean, it kind of adds to your, I mean, at least it gives some validity to a number that we can actually test. So, I mean, if you wanted to raise it to 80, let's raise it to 80, but I can't tie it to any specific.
Well, it'd be nice if we had 70 officers on the ground here.
Yeah.
Problem is, we've never got there.
No, and we don't. I mean, and just, I think historically, we usually get billed for about 62 officers. That's kind of the trend over the last couple of years. And even though our authorized was 70, but we budgeted for 65. So we've always been within 1 or 2 officers of that 65 budget limit.
Well, and
Historically,
yeah.
Unfortunately, we're in an anomaly right now.
Yeah, and
Sorry,
Staff Sergeant Moore just said 68 with 2 coming in. So we're actually at 70 hard vacancies like within the next short time. So we're budgeting for 65. We actually are going to have 70. It's the soft vacancies that we're struggling with.
So
Yeah.
let me just confirm with Mr. Cook or Chief Cook. You're going to give us some data around soft vacancies and our experience over time. Eventually, you're going to get that to us. I mean, I can submit an IR if you wish.
Oh, we can't hear you, Everett.
You've lost your voice.
No, it's good. There we
And
go.
the ability to click my microphone on. I believe through the chair, the Councillor brought it, I believe I actually have that. I should have had it up. I apologize. Bear with me, and I should have that information for you here in just a moment.
That's fine. Thank you.
Do you want to see it?
Yeah, well, definitely want
Yeah.
to see it,
Okay.
but no rush on it.
Okay.
I don't need it in the
Why
next.
why don't you, while
minute.
you're working on that, Chief Cook, I'll go to Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. So I'm just trying to wrap my head again. So we haven't had any requests for new police officers for a couple of years, right? 2 or 3 years. And the rationale, I'm looking at you guys just because you guys bring forward the budget. So the rationale for this, like I was kind of surprised when we didn't see any for a few years. Now we got this huge lump. But we're also saying that we're going to be budgeting for 75, but we're only paying for 65, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm kind of like, I'm really not sure where I'm at, quite frankly, at this, because if it actually were to come to pass that we had 75, 10 new police officers is $2.2 million to the budget. Like if we actually said, okay, we've got the carryover, but we now have to pay for them the following year. It's a substantial. So I guess, was there a rationale for why these weren't just incremented, let's say 1 a year type of thing at this point for the request, and why it's gone to a 0 and then 5?
Through the sorry, excuse me for a second.
Oh, poor Everett.
Makes it very challenging. This is like kind of fun. Through the chair to Councillor Hughes. To your question, with the ongoing number of soft vacancies for administration, it's become a realization over the course of the last year that this increase is more of a need than it's a need to have versus a nice to have. Meaning, based on the historical soft vacancies we've had, which again currently are 13, it shows that the trends are continuing where we will be carrying those soft vacancies, which will impact service delivery. And that will impact those services such as community engagement and proactive patrols. Further to that, earlier on this spring, council approved updating council policy CPS-02 to reflect 1 RCMP officer be in place for every 1,000 residents. Of course, our official census right now is 68,000 and some. I believe we know that we're estimated to be over 70,000. So understanding we have another census coming up in the future, this is more of a proactive move to help make sure that the City of St. Albert policy is in line with the number of officers we have.
So we shouldn't expect another large increase the next year or two on top of it because you're getting ahead of the population, I guess, is what we're saying?
I would suggest that's a safe assumption, but also too, there would be another number of other contributing factors such as our crime severity index and such that may have impacts as well as community-based programming should there be a request for additional services. Those are impacts that we just couldn't speak to today, but this would get us in a better place than as we move into the future to meet the needs of our residents. Yes.
Okay. And Councillor Mackay, you said something you wanted?
Yeah, actually, I think Everett just kind of captured it. Part of I think you never saw that incremental increase, primarily because, in our council policy C-PS-02 community policing, it specifically says to adequately resource and maintain policing services, the city will endeavor to meet the following resource allocations. And that speaks to the 1 RCMP actual build for every 1,000 residents. So we never really stayed true to that policy other than, if it would have been brought to us, we probably would have incrementally been increasing as per the policy. It just wasn't actually, it was will endeavor. Until it was actually identified earlier this year that we looked at, this is a strategy that the policing committee wants to put forward as a method of, as is being explained a couple of times already, to deal with some of our vacancies. I don't even know, had we even followed the policy strictly by raising it every time we actually had a census to 1,000, I don't even know if we would have, it would have really mattered or really helped, but it would have spoke to the incremental, and we probably would have only been maybe here asking for an additional 2 members maybe, but now we're asking for the 5 that would get us to that point. That's all.
Okay. To staff, when are we reviewing the reserves? Because we typically, in the past, we would review the reserve policy almost annually, and I don't remember doing it at all this term, actually. So is there a plan of when we're going to be doing that?
Thank you, Councillor Hughes, for the question. We've actually been working on reviewing a bunch of our financial policies over the last year, and I believe the reserve one is actually almost ready to be coming to council with some proposed changes. Okay, so in Q1 of next year, or when are you thinking? Yes, I would say for sure. Okay. Because to further what Mayor Herron said, I know she's like, if there's enough money for the staffing, that puts some into the supplies, which actually could just be added to the reserve as a item thing, up to $5 to that thing. But then I'm looking at, like, we're over by what, 7 right now, you're saying, or more than that, more than 7, like 13 from actual to budgeted, right? Right. So that's like 1.7 million, almost $1.8 million. That's going to go into surplus, is what you're telling me. So as I listen to all of this and the fact that we really have been over budget, I'm wondering if when you have this discussion going forward, I'm just going to bring this up because it's going to come forward and you guys can chew on it for a while. But what if some of that extra money was actually going towards the capital reserve and then offset the amount that we're required to put from taxpayers into the capital reserve, thereby helping us reduce the taxes but also matching the amount that we need to have in the capital reserve. So I'm just bringing that up as a suggestion that maybe you guys want to think about something or something of that nature, so that we aren't just having to go all the way in the surplus. I realize we have discussions about capital reserve at the back end, but I'm also trying to think of is how do we reduce that demand to go into that capital reserve every year that's increasing the taxes every year. And if there's an opportunity that we can take that off of the plates of taxpayers up front, that might be a way that we could handle something like that. I'm just trying to think of something, because that capital reserve amount can fluctuate as we had it changed last year. And if we can do that instead of, then, I mean, I'm looking at even this year. If I was to put forward a motion to say that the surplus of a minimum of X dollars that was going towards the police, it's been determined that we don't require it, was used to offset the taxes.
By decreasing the amount that's coming out of the demand for the policy for the capital, would that be like, I realize it's off policy, but I'm saying, is that possible to do?
It's definitely something like you said, give us something to chew on. I'll have to think about it. Just initial reactions would be though, is that the any RCMP surplus that we do end up having every year is a one-time surplus, right?
Yeah.
So to have any kind of a policy that's sort of making because you're talking about potentially reducing the 1.5%.
Right.
For the RMR, which is kind of an ongoing program using kind of one-time dollars is a bit of a challenge because we don't actually really even know what the surplus theoretically we can forecast, but we don't know what the surplus is going to be on RCMP until January or February of the following year when we're approving budget in December. So just some initial thoughts is something we can kind of think about, but my biggest challenge is that you're then basically using one-time dollars to offset an ongoing program. But the surplus that does come up at the end of the year, of course, council has, administration will make recommendations of where that surplus should go, but council can always, make amendments to that and put the surplus.
Yeah, no, as you were talking, I was like, no, this is a one time for ongoing. I understand that would be the problem then. I'm just trying to figure out a way to get these taxes down. That's all. Okay, I think that was all the questions I had, because as you already confirmed with the council, with Mayor Herron, that we're not increasing the amount going into off the demand for the taxes. We're still budgeting the same amount. We're just going to increase our ask is what we're doing on this. Okay.
Yeah, this doesn't affect budget.
Yeah. What I'm wondering is we don't have anything in a policy about like, right now we're at 52. Let's say we're to get up to 63, like we're getting close to the actual amount that we may need. And it's a possibility we can go over. I guess, is there anything in our processes to say we actually need to increase our budgeted amount? Like there's nothing, a trigger, or do you guys just have a discussion, just bring it forward to us?
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Yeah, I think it would kind of be a discussion. We'd be monitoring it as we were getting close, we'd be looking at, and it wouldn't necessarily be that we'd have to increase it a whole bunch potentially in 1 year, right? We do have the contract expense reserve. If we saw we needed to start bringing it up, we could use the reserve to offset as we maybe bring it up one officer per year over a number of years. So I certainly don't anticipate us having to have a big increase in budget all at one time. I think we'll monitor it, and as we start getting close to that 65, we would consider increasing the budget, or if council really wanted to try and achieve more than 65 on the ground, then again, we'd have to come back and look at sort of this over ask situation again, based on our current soft vacancy rate to get closer to where we want to be.
Okay, I'm going to stop asking questions. Thank you.
So just for clarity, we've got 1.134 million in the reserve. And you've already, so is that close to the ceiling of 6? Yeah. So that kind of reconciliation happens in April, May, when we know how much reserves and surplus. It's not affecting the budget conversations we're having in the next couple of weeks.
No, it doesn't impact budget at all. We sort that out at year end.
Okay. All right, Councillor Jolly, go ahead.
I'm just happy to bring this forward if you're ready.
Okay, you always make motions. I'm going to go to Councillor Jolly. Does it matter? Okay, he did have his hand up before you did, Councillor Jolly. Go ahead, just make a motion.
I know that Natalie would do this well as well, so, but that in accordance with Article 5 of the municipal police service agreement, the mayor be authorized to formally request the federal government to increase the RCMP authorized complement of the St. Albert RCMP detachment by 5 additional members for a total of 75. That Schedule 08 of City Council Policy C-FS-01 financial reserves be amended to increase the ceiling of budgeted RCMP officers from 6 to 8.
Okay, accept that motion. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Just in opening comments, I don't think I have to go over a lot of what the strategy behind this was. I just want to appreciate the police committee members that are still in attendance, and also Staff Sergeant Moore for attending as well. I mean, we've heard that we are in a bind in relation to soft vacancies, and we're using this as a strategy to address some of the shortfalls and deal with some of the struggles that we're we're faced right now because as being identified, and I think Mr. Cook identified, or Chief Cook identified some of the challenges. We've heard that even from Inspector Komiak that was forced to actually remove officers from community work and put them in response to call mode. And that's just not effective. I can use lots of personal experience that you get your best, excuse the language, best bang for your buck from actually being out in the community working to be proactive rather than being reactive. And I don't think I can draw a direct correlation, but you saw for one of the first times we saw a large spike in our crime severity index this year. We saw a large increase in our break and enters. And I'm not specifically saying that by putting more officers that we're going to actually be able to have a lower crime severity index, because you don't necessarily tie policing to or crime to the number of police officers, but by getting them back into working in the community, you might be able to do a lot to raise or reduce some of the perception in the community that the police aren't around. And also you might be able to actually look at how do we look at solving some of the crime and dealing with some of the other kind of soft factors. So when the policing committee discussed this was really as Ian mentioned, this is a local solution to a very complex problem. And as we've already heard, there's really no big impact. Well, there's no impact in relation to our tax budget. This is just a strategy to help us deal with a situation of being kind of needing more officers actually in our community. So hope I get support.
Councillor Broadhead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Certainly, I'm not here to speak against this motion. In fact, I'm going to support it. But I am dismayed that we continually have to, exercise this particular option to get the number of officers that we actually require to service a community of 70,000 people. Like I said, for 13 years, I've been doing this, and it seems like this conversation happens often. And what I haven't quite got my finger on yet is why, when we talk to colleagues around the region, they don't talk about their detachments having a large number of soft vacancies now. Maybe that's not true. Maybe they are facing the same thing we are. But and this is not about the officers that are assigned here. They're all wonderful people, and they have a tough job to do. And so this is not about the officers. But when we speak to the commanding officers of the province, fundamentally, there's got to be something that they can do whereby, a local detachment is not losing, 20% or 25% of their detachment to soft vacancies, and which, to Councillor Mackay's point, it impacts our community. And so we see spikes in soft crime, hard crime, and virtually no traffic enforcement by RCMP, simply because they're caught up doing the other things. So anyway, I'm going to support this. I hope we get 5 more officers here shortly. That would be my hope. I'm not sure I'm going to hold my breath. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Jolly, do you have any comments?
Administration provided a great backgrounder, so it's really self-explanatory. And like Councillor Broadhead, I'm frustrated that we're having to exercise this strategy, but I'm certainly supportive.
Seeing no one else wanting to jump in, I'll just say that my conversations with regional mayors, I know Devon has a really hard time and Beaumont last term was actually trying to talk to Edmonton about what contracting EPS, because they were struggling so much with, can't remember if there were soft or hard vacancies, but they were vacancies. And just before I arrived here, I was at the RMA conference and Curtis DeBlocky was on the stage giving somewhat positive news that recruitment is up at Depot. So that's always good news. And they've done a few things to make the application process easier and getting people back or trained up and on the streets as fast as possible. So that's good news. So hopefully by asking for 75, we'll be able to get to, personally, I think 70 would be the appropriate number, and we might have to have conversations about that budget one day soon. But we all know as council that there has been many concerned residents talking about the lack of presence, whether it's real or perceived in St. Albert. And so hopefully this will help. And I know it will help you because there is a struggle trying to serve a community of over 70,000 people with 63 officers or whatever you're at. So 65, sorry, 55. That's right, with the soft and everything. Thank you for that, Councillor Mackay. That's a really low. So we need all the help we can get. So I will be supporting this. Anything to close, Councillor Mackay?
Yeah, I hope Councillor Broadhead doesn't hold his breath, because even if we prove it today, it's going to take a year. So, yeah, take a deep breath.
He'll pass out.
I do want to, I think this, one of the things that we have to also recognize, and you actually said it, I mean, because we have good officers, and I can attest to the fact that even if you bring in officers from other detachments to actually fill in on overtime, the workload gets piled on to the existing officers. And at 55 officers, the caseload just almost becomes unmanageable. And so we have to really look at how this benefits the current members that we have who come into work every day, put their uniform on, get out on the street and work as hard as they possibly can for the residents of our community. So we really, by doing this, we not only benefit the residents, but we benefit the members who are working in the detachment and work every day very hard. And as the detachment goes bigger, you get more people, and as you know, there's just you just have more frequency of injuries or more maternity leaves or more paternity leaves or other training issues or other requirements. So, I mean, it might not be really comparing the same thing if we look at what's impacting other detachments for any number of different reasons. So we have to be a little cautious as to what those numbers are. So anyways, that's my closing comments. Thanks.
Call for the vote. Voting is closed. And that passes unanimously. Awesome. Okay. No, but he can if he wants. Sorry. All right. Next thing we had on our agenda was the repeal of the penalty bylaw, which is bylaw 22, 2023, that went through 3 readings on consent. And there was no emergent items. I'm now on to information requests, notice, motions, and announcements. So feel like there was one, Councillor Jolly, you had a IR, I think, that came in on Saturday when we were doing our interviews. Is that correct?
Oh, I did. It was actually a motion.
It was an emotion? Okay.
If I can find it. Hold on.
It's in the chat, Councillor Jolly.
Okay, thank you. So that by a date, I can take administration's advice. Administration make recommendations regarding best practices regarding recruitment and onboarding for committee of council appointments and associated recommendations for amendments to applicable policies or bylaws.
All right. Is there any other information, requests, notice, motions, or announcements that have what anyone wants to read in? Right, seeing none.
Oh, sorry, Mayor. Go ahead, Sir Bermansky. We received one from you, Councillor Bermansky. Yeah,
there was one from Councillor Bermansky.
Yes, there was. Put it in the chat for you.
Shit, not everyone's on Zoom. So can we put it on the screen or? Councilor Mansky, can you find it?
It's
Okay,
right.
go ahead. Yep. Quite often it's just, doesn't have to be word for word, just the intention.
Yep,
Yeah.
okay. In light of information brought forward to me that is possibly considered a fire risk using scissor staircases in buildings over 5 stories, what are the administrative policy guidelines and safety regulation best practices for this use? And that's just an information request.
All right, and that's it, right? We're good? Okay. All right, now I need a motion to go in camera. We're going to talk about the internal audit steering committee bylaw. Councillor Killick, go ahead.
The council move in camera for a discussion with administration regarding a draft bylaw pursuant to sections 23(1)A and 24(1)A of the Freedom of Information Privacy Act.
Call for the vote. Voting is closed. And that passes unanimously. All right, we will convene in camera. Do you want to give me host duties?